The rain was falling heavily over downtown Chicago as I walked up to the valet entrance of the Grand Reserve. I pressed my thumb against the small velvet ring box hidden inside my coat pocket. 6 years. 6 long years of working extra hours, skipping vacations, and helping Chloe build her family's struggling boutique business. Tonight was our anniversary, and I was finally going to ask her to be my wife. I stepped inside the dimly lit foyer, shaking the rainwater from my shoulders. The manager recognized me and gave a sympathetic nod, pointing toward the VIP terrace at the back. As I opened the glass door to the private patio, the sound of laughing voices filled the air. A large banner hung above a long table loaded with seafood platters and vintage wine. In the center of the crowd stood Chloe, wearing a dazzling silver dress I had never seen before. Her arm was wrapped tightly around Julian Croft, the arrogant heir to Croft Logistics. "Chloe," I called out, stepping onto the terrace. "What is all this? I thought we had a private table booked for 8. The laughter stopped instantly. Chloe turned toward me, her smile dropping into an expression of sheer annoyance. "Lucas," she snapped, crossing her arms as her friends turned to stare. "What are you doing here right now?" "It's our 6th anniversary, Chloe," I said, my heart starting to race as I looked at Julian's hand resting comfortably on her hip. "I've been waiting outside for 20 minutes. You didn't answer any of my calls." Julian smirked, taking a slow sip from his champagne flute. "He's still calling you, babe? I thought you made it clear to your little errand boy that tonight was my private celebration party." "I did," Chloe sighed, rolling her eyes as she walked over to me. "Lucas, look at you. You're dripping water all over the floor. You look completely out of place." "Out of place?" I repeated, hurt and confusion swelling in my chest. "Chloe, I paid for your rent last month when your boutique was short on funds. I stayed up till 3 in the morning every night finalizing your quarterly tax balance sheets. How could you invite Julian to our anniversary dinner?" "Because Julian actually brings real value to my life, Lucas," she hissed in a harsh whisper, stepping closer so her friends wouldn't hear every word. "Julian's father just agreed to inject $2 million into my family's retail chain. What can you give me? A cheap dinner and a humble life in a rented apartment. Is that all 6 years meant to you?" I asked quietly, my voice shaking. "Just money and business deals?" "Money makes the world go around, Lucas," Julian interjected, walking over and placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. "You're a nice kid, but you're just not in our league. Look at you. You drive a 10-year-old sedan and wear off-the-rack suits." "Take your hand off me, Julian," I said coldly. Julian chuckled, pulling his hand back and looking down at his polished leather shoes. "Tell you what, my red Ferrari outside got a little dirty on the highway driving here in the rain. Since you're so eager to serve Chloe, why don't you make yourself useful tonight?" Chloe's eyes lit up with a cruel, mocking gleam. She turned to the corner of the terrace, grabbed a yellow plastic bucket and a soapy rag from the restaurant cleaning cart, and thrust them directly into my chest. "Here," Chloe sneered loudly, ensuring everyone at the table could hear her. "Wash Julian's sports car right now. Once you finish wiping down every single panel, maybe I'll give you 5 minutes to talk to me about our relationship. Otherwise, get out of my sight." The terrace erupted in snickers and muffled laughter from her high society friends. I stood frozen in place, holding the wet bucket. I looked into Chloe's blue eyes, searching for even a single flicker of warmth, guilt, or memory of the sacrifices I had made for her. There was nothing, just cold vanity and disgust. "You're serious?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You really want me to wash his car?" "You heard her, boy." Julian laughed, reaching into his crocodile skin wallet. He pulled out a crisp $100 bill and tossed it casually onto the wet wooden floorboards at my feet. "There's a tip for your hard work. Consider it an early severance package from Chloe's life." The paper bill floated into a small puddle of water between my shoes. I looked at the $100 bill, then up at Julian's arrogant smirk, and finally at Chloe, who was watching me with her chin held high, waiting for me to bow my head and obey, as I always had. Slowly, carefully, I let go of the plastic bucket. It crashed against the floor, splashing soapy water across Julian's expensive leather shoes. "Hey, watch it, you idiot!" Julian shouted, jumping back in anger. Without saying a word, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the small velvet box. I opened it once, revealing the brilliant diamond ring I had spent my entire savings on, before snapping it shut. I walked past Chloe and Julian toward the sleek red sports car parked under the glowing lights of the driveway. I placed the velvet box squarely on the hood of the Ferrari, right in the center of the red paint. "Lucas, what are you doing?" Chloe demanded, running to the edge of the terrace railing. "Come back here and pick up that money." I turned back to look at her one last time, my eyes completely cold and detached. "Keep the ring, Chloe," I said, my voice echoing through the quiet rain. "And keep Julian. You're going to need every penny he has." I turned my back on them and walked out into the pouring rain, leaving behind the girl I loved, the money on the floor, and 6 years of my life. I pulled out my phone as the ice-cold rain soaked through my clothes, dialing a number I hadn't called in years. "Marcus," I said as soon as my brother answered. "Bring the family ledgers. It's time." The cold rainwater soaked through my clothes, but the icy numbness inside my chest was far worse. I pushed open the door to my small, sparsely furnished apartment and stood in the dark entryway, listening to the drip of water onto the worn wooden floor. 6 years of absolute devotion had been shattered in a single evening, reduced to a thrown bucket and a crisp $100 bill floating in a puddle. A cheap dinner and a humble life, I whispered to myself, Chloe's harsh voice echoing through the quiet room. Julian brings real value to my life. I collapsed onto the sofa, staring blankly at my trembling hands. I had hidden my family's immense wealth for years, wanting Chloe to love me for who I was, not for my money. I had slaved over her company's books, bailed out her failing boutique, and watched her climb higher on my invisible support. A sharp, firm knock on the door broke the silence. "Lucas, it's me. Open up," my older brother Marcus called out from the hallway. I pulled myself up, unlocked the door, and stepped aside. Marcus walked in, his dark eyes sweeping over my wet hair and drenched suit jacket. He set a heavy leather briefcase onto the dining table and let out a long, frustrated sigh. "You look terrible, Lucas," Marcus said softly, resting a hand on my damp shoulder. "Did she really do it?" "She made me stand in front of her high society friends and handed me a cleaning bucket," I replied, my voice raspy as I sat across from him. "She told me to wash Julian Croft's Ferrari if I wanted 5 minutes to speak with her." "That ungrateful snake," Marcus growled, his knuckles turning white as he unlatched the brass locks on his briefcase. "You gave up living in the penthouse, working at headquarters, and taking your place in the family business just to live quietly with her." "I thought she loved me for me, Marcus," I said, shaking my head. "I really believed we were building a life together." "Well, now you know her true colors," Marcus said, pulling out a thick blue folder stamped with the gold crest of Vance Global Trust. "I brought the original inheritance ledgers and commercial loan registries like you asked on the phone." "What am I actually looking at here?" I asked, leaning forward as he spread the documents across the table. "You're looking at reality," Marcus stated, tapping his finger against a highlighted ledger sheet. "Chloe and her mother, Victoria, think you are just a low-level accountant. They have no idea that your personal holding trust owns 75% of the commercial debt network backing Sterling Retail." 75%? I repeated, tracing my finger over the legal signatures on the agreement. "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "Her family's boutique expansion was funded almost entirely by low-interest loans routed through our regional credit subsidiaries. If you pull those credit guarantees tomorrow morning, Sterling Retail won't even be able to pay its supplier invoices by Friday." "And what about Julian Croft?" I asked, looking up at my brother. "Chloe said his father is injecting $2 million into her business." Marcus chuckled bitterly, shaking his head. "Croft Logistics is drowning in short-term liability notes. They've been begging Vance Global for a liquidity extension for the past 3 months. Julian is using fake promises of investment to secure Chloe's retail real estate as collateral for his father's debts." I stared at the financial figures, a cold wave of realization washing over me. They're using each other, and they treated me like garbage in the process. "You hold all the cards, Lucas," Marcus said firmly, sliding a secure satellite phone across the table toward me. "Mother has been waiting for your call for 3 years. She told me to tell you that the family trust is ready whenever you are." My hand hovered over the phone. A part of me still remembered the quiet mornings with Chloe, the dreams we shared, and the promises we made. But the image of her handing me that yellow bucket burned away the remaining traces of hesitation. I picked up the phone and dialed the private direct line. It rang only twice before a calm, authoritative voice answered. Lucas, my mother, Eleanor Vance, spoke through the speaker. Is that you, my son? It's me, Mom, I said softly, swallowing the lump in my throat. You were right about Chloe. I heard about what happened at the Grand Reserve tonight, Eleanor said, her voice dropping into a tone of quiet, lethal anger. Marcus informed me of how she humiliated you in front of those people. I spent 6 years trying to protect her, Mom, I confessed, my voice cracking slightly. I sacrificed my own standing to help her family survive. Listen to me carefully, Lucas, Eleanor commanded gently. Your father built Vance Global on honor, integrity, and absolute strength. He taught you never to measure your worth by the noise of foolish people who only value luxury cars and empty titles. You gave that girl your heart, and she tried to step on it. She made me feel so small tonight, Mom, I admitted, looking at the drenched suit jacket lying on the floor. You are a Vance, Lucas, Eleanor reminded me, her voice ringing with unshakable power. You are the heir to the largest hedge fund and credit network in this country. Tomorrow, you step back into your true identity. Do not let people who operate on greed dictate your value. What do you want me to do, Mom? I asked, feeling a powerful resolve take root inside me. I am issuing a full buyout order for Sterling Retail's debt and freezing Croft Logistics credit lines first thing in the morning, Eleanor declared coldly. It is time for those who humiliated you to learn who actually owns their world. Do it, Mom, I said steadily, looking at Marcus, who smiled with sharp satisfaction. Let's bring down their house of cards. The morning sun cut through the blinds, casting long shadows across my kitchen table. My phone buzzed aggressively, vibrating against the wooden surface. I picked it up, seeing Victoria Sterling's name flashing on the screen. I swiped to answer. Hello, Victoria. Listen to me very carefully, Lucas. Victoria's sharp, shrill voice blasted through the speaker before I could even settle into my chair. I heard about your disgraceful behavior at the Grand Reserve last night. How dare you make a scene in front of Julian Croft and our board members? I didn't make a scene, Victoria, I said calmly, keeping my tone completely even. Chloe handed me a cleaning bucket and told me to wash Julian's car on our anniversary. And you should have washed it without complaining. Victoria snapped back, without a hint of hesitation. You are a penniless nobody, Lucas. You have been a parasite clinging to my daughter's success for 6 years. Julian Croft's family is injecting millions into Sterling Retail today. He is bringing our family into high society, while you were nothing but dead weight. Is that how you truly feel after all the accounting work I did to keep your stores open? I asked softly. Your little tax calculations mean nothing, she barked. Julian is a man of real status. I am calling to warn you. Never contact Chloe again. If I see you near my daughter or our corporate offices, I will have security throw you into the street. Do you understand me? You won't have to worry about me calling Chloe, Victoria, I replied, a cold smile forming on my face. Just make sure your financial records are in order today. What is that supposed to mean? She demanded, her voice rising in irritation. Good luck with your press conference, I said, and hung up the phone before she could hurl another insult. An hour later, a sleek black armored sedan pulled up outside my building. I stepped inside, wearing a custom-tailored dark navy suit that Marcus had delivered to my apartment earlier. Marcus sat in the leather passenger seat, while my mother, Eleanor Vance, sat in the back, her commanding presence filling the car. You look like a Vance again, Lucas, Eleanor said, offering me a rare, proud smile as I sat beside her. Are you ready to claim what is rightfully yours? I am ready, Mom, I answered firmly. Victoria called me an hour ago to tell me I was a parasite. She will be singing a very different tune before noon. Marcus chuckled, handing a leather-bound folder to Eleanor. Here are the final buyout acquisition contracts for Sterling Retail's commercial debt, along with the immediate recall notices for Croft Logistics Credit Network. We arrived at the towering glass headquarters of Vance Global Trust in the heart of the financial district. Executive staff lined the private elevator hallway, bowing respectfully as Eleanor walked through the glass doors with Marcus and me right behind her. We entered the top-floor executive suite, where massive monitors displayed live news channels. On the screen, a press banner read, Sterling Retail and Croft Logistics, Strategic Merger and Engagement Announcement. Look at them, Marcus said, pointing at the television display. They think they're on top of the world. On the screen, Chloe stood in an exquisite white designer dress beside Julian, who wore a tailored black tuxedo. Dozens of camera flashes illuminated their faces as they sat behind a mahogany microphone table at the downtown press center. Victoria stood right behind them, beaming with arrogant pride. "We are thrilled to announce not only our corporate merger." Julian spoke confidently into the cluster of news microphones, flashing an arrogant smile, "but also my personal engagement to Chloe Sterling. Together, Croft Logistics and Sterling Retail will dominate the Midwest market." Chloe smiled radiantly, raising her hand to display a massive diamond engagement ring to the cheering reporters. "With Julian's capital backing our expansion, Sterling Retail is entering a golden era of unstoppable growth." In our glass boardroom, Eleanor picked up a gold fountain pen, completely unbothered by the spectacle on the screen. She looked at me, her sharp eyes gleaming with absolute authority. "With this signature, Lucas," Eleanor stated clearly, "Vance Global acquires 100% of Sterling Retail's outstanding debt liabilities, making us their sole primary creditor. Furthermore, we hereby execute the immediate freeze and total buyout of Croft Logistics credit lines." "Sign it, Mom," I said smoothly, watching Chloe's laughing face on the monitor. Eleanor pressed the pen to the paper and signed her full name with a swift, decisive flourish. "It is done. David Chun at the Central Clearing House has been instructed to execute the asset transfer immediately." "How long until the notification hits their system?" Marcus asked, checking his gold wristwatch. "Right now," Eleanor replied simply. On the live television broadcast, Julian was in the middle of answering a reporter's question about their projected profit margins when his personal phone began vibrating furiously against the podium. A second later, Chloe's tablet chirped with frantic emergency alerts, and Victoria's phone rang in her hands. Julian chuckled nervously, waving off the distraction. "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, just routine business calls." He swiped his phone screen, expecting a minor update. Suddenly, Julian's face drained of all color. His eyes widened in absolute horror as he stared at the screen text. Beside him, Victoria dropped her designer handbag onto the floor, her mouth hanging open in sheer panic as she read her bank's high-priority alert. "What's happening?" Chloe whispered loudly into her live microphone, her voice carrying across the entire newsroom. "Julian, why are all our corporate credit lines displaying zero?" Across town in the quiet luxury of the Vance Global Executive Suite, I folded my arms and watched the live chaos unfold on the screen. "They built their entire world on vanity and borrowed money," I said quietly, watching Chloe's frantic expression. "Now they get to find out who actually owns it." "Lucas, please," she begged, her voice cracking frantically as loud commotion erupted in her background. "I made a mistake. Julian lied to me about his family's money. We can talk about this. Please don't destroy my family." "I am attending your emergency board meeting at 3 o'clock, Chloe," I said softly. "Have your legal counsel present." I pressed the red button, disconnecting the call, and looked out over the bright Chicago skyline. The live television feed on our boardroom wall captured pure, unfiltered chaos. Microphones remained active as the reporters shouted over one another, demanding answers about the sudden market collapse. On screen, Julian furiously swiped through his phone, his face turning ghostly white as camera flashes illuminated his shaking hands. "There must be a major technical glitch with the central exchange," Julian shouted into the live microphones, trying to maintain his arrogant composure. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. Croft Logistics has plenty of capital liquidity." "Julian, my banking app is locked," Victoria screamed, completely ignoring the press as she shoved her phone into his face. "It says our primary merchant accounts have been frozen by order of the master debt holder. What is going on? I am calling our lead private banker right now," Julian barked, holding his phone to his ear with a trembling hand. I sat comfortably back in my leather executive chair at Vance Global headquarters, sipping my dark coffee. Beside me, Marcus brought up the live credit transaction logs on his laptop monitor. "Watch this, Lucas," Marcus said, pointing to the screen with a sharp grin. "He's trying to process a manual transaction override through his emergency corporate card." On the broadcast, a catering manager stepped onto the stage, holding an electronic payment machine. "Mr. Croft, the press center venue requires immediate payment for the live broadcast satellite link, or they are cutting the feed." "Of course. Here, charge my black card," Julian snapped, pulling a sleek titanium card from his wallet and sliding it through the reader. A loud, sharp beep echoed clearly through the broadcast microphones. "Transaction declined, sir," the manager announced loudly. "Reason code, account frozen." "Decline?" Julian shrieked, his voice cracking on live television. "That's impossible. Try it again. Charge my personal line." "Declined again, Mr. Croft," the manager replied, stepping back as reporters began taking rapid photos of the rejected card reader. Chloe stepped forward, her eyes wide with mounting terror as she grabbed Julian's arm. "Julian, what is happening?" "My mother's boutique suppliers are calling my phone. They say their morning delivery trucks are turning around because our corporate credit guarantees just vanished." "Shut up, Chloe. I am trying to think," Julian yelled, shoving her hand away in full view of the cameras. "Someone is deliberately sabotaging us." My personal phone on the conference table began vibrating violently. The screen displayed Chloe's caller ID. "Put it on speaker, Lucas," my mother, Eleanor, said softly from the head of the table. "Let us hear what your former girlfriend has to say." I tapped the screen and placed the phone flat on the polished mahogany surface. "Lucas!" Chloe's voice screamed through the speaker, breathless, shrill, and laced with furious panic. "What on earth did you do to my company's database?" "Good morning, Chloe," I answered calmly, keeping my voice entirely flat. "I see your press conference isn't going as smoothly as you planned." "Don't you dare give me that arrogant tone," she shrieked, heavy background noise of yelling reporters and shouting board members echoing through her line. "Did you hack our corporate accounting servers before you walked out last night? You were our lead bookkeeper. Did you alter our loan routing codes out of spite?" "I didn't hack anything, Chloe," I replied smoothly, looking at Marcus, who was quietly laughing. "I told you last night that I was finished managing your records. Julian's credit cards are declined. My mother's retail accounts are completely locked." Chloe screamed hysterically. "The board members are threatening to sue my family for gross negligence. You are throwing a pathetic, childish temper tantrum because I chose Julian over you. Is that really what you think this is, Chloe?" I asked softly, shaking my head at her unbelievable arrogance. "I know it's you," she shouted. "You were always jealous of Julian's wealth. You couldn't handle seeing him invest $2 million into my family's business. Undo whatever you did to our credit files right now, or I will have the police arrest you for corporate sabotage." Julian's voice suddenly cut into the call as he grabbed the phone from Chloe. "Listen to me, you little worm," Julian spat through the speaker. "I don't know what kind of back-alley virus you uploaded to Sterling Retail's accounting network, but I have 5 corporate attorneys standing right beside me. We will ruin you financially. You will spend the rest of your pathetic life in federal prison." "Mr. Croft," Eleanor's powerful, icy voice echoed into the phone microphone, instantly cutting off Julian's tirade. Silence fell over the line for 2 long seconds. Who is this?" Julian stammered, his aggressive tones suddenly faltering. "I am Eleanor Vance, Chief Executive Officer of Vance Global Trust," my mother stated with absolute authority. "And you are speaking to my son, Lucas Vance, the primary heir to our global credit holdings." "Vance Global," Chloe whispered in the background, her voice cracking in pure confusion. "Lucas? What is she talking about?" 2 hours ago, Vance Global executed a complete legal buyout of Sterling Retail's primary commercial debt, Eleanor explained coldly into the speaker. "Furthermore, we recalled all credit guarantees previously extended to Croft Logistics due to your firm's severe insolvencies. My son did not hack your files, Mr. Croft. We simply purchased your entire life." No, that's impossible," Julian stammered, his voice trembling with sudden, overwhelming terror. "Vance Global is a multi-billion-dollar fund. Lucas is just a cheap accountant who drives an old sedan. My brother lived modestly because he possessed genuine humility," Marcus chimed in coldly. "Something neither of you could ever comprehend while you were throwing $100 bills on the floor." "Lucas?" Chloe wept, her arrogant demeanor completely shattering into desperate sobs over the phone line. "Lucas, please talk to me. Is this true? Are you really a Vance?" "I am," I said quietly. "And you told me last night that money makes the world go around, Chloe. It turns out my family owns yours." The grand glass doors of the penthouse boardroom stood open as the executive elevator arrived on the top floor. I sat calmly at the head of the dark mahogany conference table, flanked by my mother, Eleanor, and David Chun, the chief auditor at the Central Exchange. I wore a tailored bespoke suit, leaning back in the plush leather chair with my hands resting loosely on the smooth wood. The heavy footsteps of Victoria, Chloe, and Julian echoed off the marble floor as they rushed into the suite, followed by 3 nervous corporate attorneys. Victoria's face was flushed red with panic, her eyes wide as she looked around the room. "We came as soon as we received the emergency summons," Victoria gasped, her voice trembling as she clutched her leather handbag. "Please, we need to speak with the chairman of Vance Global immediately. There has been a catastrophic legal misunderstanding regarding our primary credit lines." "There is no misunderstanding, Victoria," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the silent room. Chloe froze in her tracks, her hand dropping from Julian's arm. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing in utter disbelief as her eyes swept over my dark suit, my tailored cuffs, and my seat at the head of the table. "Lucas," Chloe stammered, taking 2 slow, hesitant steps forward. What are you doing sitting in the chairman's chair? Why are you dressed like that?" "Sit down, Chloe," Eleanor commanded sharply, her voice ringing with absolute authority. "You are addressing the executive leadership board of Vance Global Trust." "Aunt Eleanor?" Victoria gasped, her face draining of all color as she finally recognized my mother. "Eleanor Vance? You are the master trustee?" "I am," Eleanor replied coldly, leaning forward. "And you are currently standing in front of the sole heir to the entire Vance estate, my son, Lucas Vance." Julian slammed his hand onto the edge of the table, his face twisted in desperate rage. "This is a joke. Lucas is a nobody. He was a low-level accountant living in a cheap rental apartment. He worked for Chloe's boutique." "Silence," David Chun barked, slamming a heavy leather folder onto the table. "Mr. Croft, as chief auditor of the Central Exchange, I suggest you lower your tone. I have here the certified legal deeds, master registry filings, and trust mandates proving Lucas Vance personally holds ultimate controlling authority over Vance Global's $70 billion portfolio." Julian took a sharp step back, his jaw dropping as he stared at the certified gold seal on the top document. $70 billion, he whispered, his voice cracking in sheer terror. $70 billion, David Chun confirmed mercilessly, "which includes the precise commercial debt instruments that Vance Global acquired from your original lenders 3 hours ago." Chloe looked from David Chun to me, tears welling in her eyes as her hands began to shake violently. "Lucas, no. This can't be real. You never told me you were rich. You let me believe you were just a struggling accountant. I wanted a woman who loved me for who I was, Chloe," I said, looking directly into her tear-filled blue eyes with total detachment. "I wanted a partner who valued honesty, hard work, and loyalty over expensive titles and luxury sports cars." "I do love you, Lucas," Chloe cried out, taking a desperate step toward the table. "I was just confused. Julian manipulated me. He told me his family had millions to invest in my boutique. He made me think my business was going to collapse if I didn't cooperate with him." "I manipulated you?" Julian yelled, turning on Chloe in a panic. "You came to me, Chloe. You begged me to give you social status. You told me Lucas was a useless anchor holding you back from high society. Because you lied to me," Chloe shrieked, tears smudging her mascara as she pointed a shaking finger at Julian. "You lied about your father's capital. You used my family's real estate to cover your own gambling debts." "Both of you be quiet," Victoria sobbed, dropping to her knees beside the table and looking up at me with pleading eyes. "Lucas, please. I was wrong. I misjudged you. I was blinded by pride. Please don't destroy Sterling Retail. My late husband built those stores for Chloe." "Your late husband built those stores on honest principles, Victoria," I replied softly, my voice completely firm. "Principles you discarded the moment you thought a wealthier man walked through the door." "Lucas, please," Chloe whimpered, dropping down beside her mother, her hands clutching the edge of the mahogany table. "Remember our 6 years together. Remember all the quiet mornings, the promises we made, the future we planned. I made a terrible mistake last night. I was stupid and vain. Please give me a second chance. I will do anything you want." I looked down at Chloe, watching her tears fall onto the polished glass table. The pain that had burned in my chest the night before was completely gone, replaced by a quiet, unshakable clarity. "Last night, Chloe," I said smoothly, reaching into my jacket pocket and pulling out the crisp $100 bill Julian had thrown at my feet. You handed me a yellow bucket and told me to wash Julian's car. Chloe let out a choked sob, bowing her head as fresh tears spilled over her cheeks. Lucas, I'm so sorry. You told me that Julian brought real value to your life, and that money makes the world go around. I continued quietly, sliding the folded $100 bill across the smooth wood until it rested right in front of her shaking hands. You can keep Julian's tip, Chloe. You're going to need it. Lucas, don't walk away from me. She screamed frantically as I stood up from the executive chair and buttoned my dark suit jacket. Please, I love you, David, I said, ignoring her hysterical pleas as I turned toward the chief auditor. Proceed with the formal asset liquidation notices for both Croft Logistics and Sterling Retail. Understood, Mr. Vance, Davidson replied, opening his pen. I turned my back on Chloe's weeping figure, stepped past Julian's frozen stance, and walked out into the light of my true future. The heavy double-glass doors of the boardroom clicked shut behind us, but the frantic shouting from inside echoed down the marble hallway. I walked alongside my mother, Eleanor, and my brother, Marcus, our footsteps even and measured against the polished floor. Outside the suite, 2 federal enforcement officers stepped forward, holding official blue warrants stamped by the Financial Crimes Division. Mr. David Chun, the lead officer, spoke, nodding respectfully toward our chief auditor. Are the asset liquidation orders for Croft Logistics finalized? Every signature is verified, David Chun replied, handing over a thick stack of certified documents. Croft Logistics has failed its solvency audit. In addition, our forensic accounting team discovered 3 years of concealed offshore liabilities. Excellent, the officer stated, motioning to his partner. Julian Croft is named as an active co-conspirator in the loan fraud filings. We are executing the arrest warrant immediately. Before the officers could even reach the handle, the boardroom door burst open. Julian stumbled out into the hallway, his designer suit crumpled and his tie loosened. His face was pale, slick with sweat, and completely devoid of his former arrogance. Right behind him, Chloe rushed out, her makeup smeared with tears as she tried to pull on his arm. Julian, wait, Chloe cried desperately, her voice breaking. You can't just leave my mother and me here. You promised to take care of my family's business. Get your hands off me, Chloe, Julian snarled, shoving her back violently onto the hard floor. This is all your fault. If you hadn't dragged me into your pathetic family drama, Vance Global wouldn't have audited my company's books. My fault, Chloe sobbed, staring up from the floor in shock. You told me you were a multi-millionaire. You made me throw away 6 years of my life with Lucas because you promised me high society. You came crawling to me because you were greedy. Julian spat back, his voice echoing loudly through the corridor. You wanted a luxury sports car and fancy dinners. You dumped a guy who actually cared about you just so you could parade around on my arm. Julian Croft? The federal officer interrupted, stepping into his path with handcuffs drawn. You are under arrest for federal financial fraud and intentional misrepresentation of corporate assets. What? Julian shouted, stepping back in pure panic. No, you don't understand. My father has attorneys. Call my father right now. Your father's assets have been frozen by Vance Global, Mr. Croft, the officer replied coldly, snapping the cold steel cuffs onto Julian's wrists. You have the right to remain silent. Lucas, help me, Julian yelled frantically, looking toward me as the officers turned him around. Tell them it was just a business mistake. Talk to your mother. You know me. I do know you, Julian, I said, staring at him with complete detachment. You're the man who threw a $100 bill at my feet last night. Julian opened his mouth to speak, but the officers pulled him away toward the private service elevators, his desperate protest fading down the quiet corridor. Chloe dragged herself across the marble floor, her hands trembling as she reached toward my leather shoes. Her mother, Victoria, stood paralyzed against the wall, weeping silently as she watched her family's firm disappear into liquidation. Lucas, Chloe whimpered, looking up at me with raw, desperate agony. Please, look at me. I know I was terrible to you. I know I broke your heart at the restaurant. You didn't just break my heart, Chloe, I said softly, looking down at her. You showed me who you truly were. I was blind, she sobbed, clutching her red, tear-stained face. I let Julian's money turn me into a monster. I swear I don't care about his sports cars or his fake titles. I just want you back, Lucas. We can start over. I'll leave Chicago with you. I'll live in that tiny apartment. I'll do whatever it takes. I gave you 6 years of absolute loyalty, Chloe. I reminded her, my tone perfectly calm and unbothered. I worked late hours every night, so your boutique wouldn't fail. I put your dreams ahead of my own life. And the moment a guy in a red Ferrari walked into your store, you handed me a yellow bucket and told me I was out of your league. I made a mistake, she begged, tears spilling onto the floorboards. Please, Lucas, give me one more chance to prove my love. You don't love me, Chloe, I answered, stepping back out of her reach. You only love what my name can give you. If I were still just the poor accountant in an old sedan, you wouldn't even look at me. Marcus stepped up beside me, resting a firm, supportive hand on my shoulder. It's time to go, Lucas. The executive board is waiting at headquarters for your inaugural address. Lucas, no, Chloe shrieked as I turned my back to her. Don't leave me like this. I have nothing left. I stopped for a single brief moment and looked back at her. Sitting on the cold floor beside her trembling hand was the crumpled $100 bill Julian had thrown at my feet, the money she had demanded I pick up during our anniversary dinner. You still have Julian's tip, Chloe, I said quietly, offering her one last sad, quiet smile. Keep it. It's the exact price of 6 years. I turned away and walked beside my mother and brother toward the broad floor-to-ceiling glass doors of the building lobby. Outside, the rain had completely stopped, replaced by bright afternoon sunlight breaking through the Chicago clouds. A fleet of sleek black Vance Global sedans waited along the curb, their doors opened by drivers standing at attention. How do you feel, son? Eleanor asked, placing her hand gently over mine as we stepped out into the crisp air. I took a deep breath, feeling the heavy weight of 6 lost years lift completely off my chest. I feel free, Mom, I replied, looking toward the horizon. Let's go home.